Hello and welcome to 2002 of the series. We will today continue to read Iain McGilchrist, The Matter with Things. And we are currently with chapter
Ja, 23.
23,
So,
Flow and Movement. And there is a specific thing that happened 2002. And I got a tip here from my colleague Kalle Lundahl. In that year, 2002, Jason Paget had his accident. And as Kalle will show here, you can also listen to his TED Talk on YouTube, I guess.
yes.
And here's the man. Alternate Realities from Relativity by Jason Paget. TEDx Tacoma. Very interesting. And we will continue today at 954, chapter 23. I do like those quotes. Movement is reality itself. Isn't that very true?
Yes, by Henri Bergson.
Henri Bergson, yeah. And you can't step into the same river twice by Heraclite. Shows that permanence can only be in movement. Something the Swiss neuroscientist, AI researcher and engineer, Rolf Pfeiffer been looking into. Movement is permanence. Without movement, there is no eternity nor permanence. And that seemed to be the world that Jason Paget inhabits. Where things are fixed points, angles, triangles, polygons. There is no persistent movement. There is no permanence. Everything is disappearing in one moment and then recreated in the other. A word for that is pixelated reality. It's very close to what we mentioned earlier with God as existence, as a thing. That is the left hemisphere take. It is disjunct, nothing in connection with anything else. Seems to be that it is this disjuncted reality we are now inhabiting. It's a glorious message implicit in Iain McGilchrist's books. That is about there is a way to permanence and to more. Beyond the point reality, how we are always recreated with no connection from one creation to the other. Or some people are saying, without thinking too much, that there is some sort of continuation from birth to death, but before not and after not. But it's getting more and more common to say that there is no connection from moment to moment, and I think that is something I'm afraid many people today can agree on. Is this HDHD, almost perceived reality, with disjunct things everywhere. Here we have this little maelstrom, mini maelstrom or vortex. It looks harmonious, it is permanent, it has stability. And compare that to Jason Paget's to the right. It doesn't seem harmonious, even if it's symmetrical in many ways, and only made by straight lines. It's static, it's passing, it doesn't have the vitality of contradictions. So you can see the happy message in Iain McGilchrist is pointing to a broader reality taken in more, not as limited and disjunct. And definitely some of the friends here are quantum mechanics, Jacques Derrida, I'd say, Wittgenstein and quantum mechanics, Henri Bergson, Kierkegaard and others who been more into the spiral flow. Well, we could continue where I left off. It was in 953, so we start directly with 954. Flow, then, is not primarily about change, since it is equally about persistence. I explored this coincidence of opposites in the chapter on the nature of the organism. Quoting Novalis, consciousness flows, body flows. Given this, it is hardly surprising that the evolution of the self is such a flow too. At least the right hemisphere sees that this is the case. It is the right hemisphere in particular, the right dorsomedial prefrontal cortex, cortex, along with the right temporoparietal junction that plays the critical role in sustaining the sense of a continuous self.
Continuous self.
Of a continuous self. A self with continuity.
Yummy.
Isn't that great?
Yummy, yummy.
This is important because in the left hemisphere's world, a self does not hang together. No connection in the left hemisphere, where we presently are. No connection between the parts of the self in our current world. For Descartes, as we have seen, analyzes reduced flow to a series of atomic points. Atomic points, each devoid of any sustaining continuity with any other. His radical doubt meant that he was sure of an existence at the now point of his doubting. Because something had to be capable of doubt at all, but not of how he, René Descartes, should persist over time. Should persist over time. I have also mentioned Derek Parfit. Does it ring a bell? Derek Parfit. Derek Parfit, who by following his distinctive analytic bent concluded, remarkably enough, that persons have no continuous existence. No continuous existence. Derek Parfit. Bergson, however, by seizing reality, as he put it, from within, by intuition. Intuition. And not by simple analysis. By simple analysis.
Not by simple analysis.
Found that the one secure reality was our own personality in its flowing through time. It's through time. Our self, which endures. Endures. And as I mentioned in the last chapter, he compared it to music, an idea I will come to in due course.
Due course.
Due course. Boop, 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 boop. So for both Bergson and James, the universe, consciousness, and the embodied self all flow. All flow. All flow. change is accentuated when one sees things that flow. Persistence when one sees the flow itself. Itself. And ultimately, there is, they claim, just one incessant flow, though it may manifest as things flowing.
Incessant.
Incessant. The things arise on the surface of the flow and do not constitute it. So why do we prioritize things? Why?
Why?
Why do we do that? Conceptual thinking does not flow when we are absorbed in the natural business of living. Our consciousness, as James says, forms a stream. A stream. He saw that in this stream, no element there cuts itself from any other element. As concepts cut themselves from concepts. Cut. Uday! No part. There is no part. There is so small as not be a place of conflux. Conflux. No part there is not really next its neighbors. Which means that there is literally nothing between. Between.
Oh Holiness.
Which means again that no part goes exactly so far and no farther. That no part absolutely excludes another, but that they compensate and are cohesive. Cohesive.
Cohesive.
Cohesive. That if you tear out one,
Dear.
its roots bring out more with them. Its roots bring out more with them. That whatever is real is telescoped. And diffused into other reals, that in short, every minutest thing is already its Hegelian own other in the fullest sense of the term.
Hegelian.
Of the fullest sense of the term. In the fullest sense of the term.
Every minute thing is already its Hegelian own other.
But when we inspect focus on, and therefore immobilize our conscious thought, the flow freezes. Concepts cut themselves from concepts. And according to Bergson, our concepts have been formed on the model of solids.
Solids.
Solids. Concepts are in this respect surprisingly like matter. Like matter, like matter. They cannot interpenetrate. They are crystalline. They are crystalline.
Crystalline.
They are crystalline, disjunct, partitioned. This makes a kind of sense.
Sense.
Because Bergson continues, if the intellect, left hemisphere, has been made in order to utilize matter, its structure has no doubt been modeled upon that of matter. That of matter.
That of matter.
When it attempts to grasp process, duration, the becoming of all that is, its very concepts externalize and freeze elements that are inseparable and dynamic in their essence. Jason Paget. Jason Paget. Jason Paget. Freeze elements that are inseparable and dynamic. In their essence, the flow is frustrated, being subjected to resistance. Resistance. Equally, James maintains that the very hard and fastness of categorical conceptual thinking stops us seeing how things interpenetrate. 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 Its aim is to produce things that can be acted upon and manipulated, and therefore to prevent us from seeing it. To prevent us from seeing it.
Oh no.
Indeed. This from Kierkegaard.
Kierkegaard.
A concept means that and no other.
Yes, hallelujah.
Conceptually, time excludes space. Motion and rest exclude each other. Approach excludes contact.
Contact.
Contact. Presence excludes absence. Logocentrism. Mine excludes yours. This connection excludes that connection. And so on indefinitely. Whereas in the real concrete, sensible flux of life experiences compenetrate each other so that it is not easy to know just what is excluded and what not, and what not. What I think perhaps both James and Bergson underestimate, understandably, because they are rightly and admirably engaged in pushing back against the fragmenting nature of left hemisphere thought, is the value of resistance in differentiating with that flow. This resistance is provided by conceptual thought. Conceptual thought. Language and thin words. Thin words. The tool of conceptual thought is, of course, language. Language. As Kierkegaard put it, immediacy is reality and speech is ideality. 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 Reality I cannot express in speech, for to indicate it, I use ideality, which is a contradiction, an untruth. As we saw in part 2, Eastern traditions prize silence and mistrust. Language.
Language.
Language. Language. Language. Language. Language. Their philosophical utterances are largely apophatic.
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 Apophatic. Apophatic.
Over deliberately disrupts conceptual and linguistic thinking, pointing to its limitations.
Pointing to its limitations.
Pointing, ostensive definition, Augustine. For example, the Tao that can be named is not the real Tao.
Tao. Meow.
Meow, Tao.
The meow that can be named is not the real meow.
It's another thing. Very good. Such disruption could be seen as the whole aim of Zen. If having an overt aim were not in itself to subvert what Zen stands for, it brings to our awareness those things that must remain implicit if they are not to be denatured. That can never be clear when expressed in language.
Language.
Why Eastern thought so often seems to us what we call paradoxical.
Paradoxical.
By contrast, the aim for clarity resolves complexities into generalities. Into simple generalities, and what cannot be reduced in this manner is charged with being obscure, says Bergson. Says Bergson.
Bergson.
Thus is explained the striking inferiority of the intuitive point of view in philosophical controversy. Criticism of an intuitive philosophy is so easy and so certain to be well received that it will always tempt the beginner. Regret may come later. Regret may come later.
No. Regret may come later.
Yes, indeed.
Regret may come later.
Yeah. Yes.
For the person accusing intuitivism. For the person criticizing intuition. Regret may come later. Father, I have sinned. I criticized intuition.
Regret often does come later if one has not by then become so narrow and rigid. Yes, very good. That one cannot see what it is one can no longer see. And it was for this reason, as we saw in part 2, that many philosophers have asserted that philosophy must ultimately give way to poetry or to music, which transcend conceptual thinking and everyday language. Everyday language. In using language, we break up what is in reality inseparable, uncountable, immeasurable into chunks. We substitute, we substitute words for elements in experience. And these words, as Bergson puts it, ever after will cover them up. We then attribute to them fixity, the discontinuity, the generality of the words themselves. That is certainly the danger. For James, events separated by years of time in a man's life hang together unbrokenly by the intermediary events. I think it's an excellent point of post-intermediary events. Or I continue to the end. No, their names, to be sure, cut them into separate conceptual entities. But no cut existed in the continuum in which they originally came.
Originally came is the last. Originally came. Page 956, I believe. 956.
I do a little here on the whiteboard. The modern self left hemisphere is discontinuous. It does not have a continuity, a flow, like the river, or why not the maelstrom. There is a dot-like thinking, where one thought is separated or separable from every next thought. And it's critical, absolutely critical, and here is, of course, the medical, rather hard jargon in the brain. The right hemisphere, particularly the right dorsomedial prefrontal cortex, along with the right temporoparietal junction. We remember this from both Barbara Tarski and Lisa Friedman-Bartet. These are the places for continuous realization, and they are not active in modern man, where the left hemisphere makes it impossible for have a continuous broad thinking that I would say, as Bergson, has both apprehension and protension. Protension to the past and apprehension to what we understand. Already for, and this is interesting, for Descartes, it was only in the now that it could be a self, not in the past, not in the future. And this now was also point-like. So it was just a point without no connection to any other movement. No wonder philosophers and thinkers like, for instance, Daniel Dennett says, there is no consciousness. Why so? He doesn't have it himself. And there's a nice quote. Bergson, however, by seizing reality, as he put it, from within, by intuition, right hemisphere, and not by simple analysis, left hemisphere. Found that the one secure reality was our own personality in its flowing through time, our self which endures. So enduring selves are very uncommon today, very uncommon, hardly exists. Derek Parfit, one of the philosophers I hugely admired many years ago, he actually did say that no person have continuous existence. Conceptual thinking is like matter, like atoms. We discussed earlier, only seeing language as the morphs makes it discontinuous. It's the gestures that brings it together that are holophrastic, wholesome, bringing the whole thing in. Nothing is outside. But only when the two contradictions are present simultaneously. Words and gestures. Music was the example that made it understandable for me. We do not listen to music note by note. Already with the first couple of notes when listening to, for instance, the Matthew Passion, I had the whole concept in my flowing consciousness, not cut up, I do recall sometimes it's being cut up when I'm stressed out, when we go to the left hemisphere. And I don't enjoy it at all as much anymore. I can still hear it, but I anticipate it too strongly and I try to grasp it, almost like tensing. There is an interesting thing, and that is matter of thoughts in one way. What thoughts? The conceptual ones with very sharp borders. You say this, a sharp border, or as we discussed many times, a stain is sharp like matter. It defines, it becomes analytical, and then thinking is matter. It's the very same thing, something that we also learned from quantum mechanics, who reinstalled the flow in reality. Literally, the wave of potentiality, the superposition before the point like either or, that brings in all the possibilities and could or should be the essence of reality. And now to some quotes. At the end of page 954, or just above the subtitle Conceptual Thinking. So why do we prioritize things? Why are they so high up on the scale? And we go to 955 to have a look at that. But when we inspect from the very beginning, focus on and therefore immobilize our conscious thought like this, the flow freezes. Concepts cut themselves from concepts. And according to Bergson, our concepts have been formed on the model of solids, matters, things. Concepts are in this respect surprisingly like matter, crystalline. If we go further down, like 12 lines, equally James maintains that the very hard and fastness of categorical, and I do like this, it's fast as well. Categories comes much faster than the flow thing, so to speak. It's like immediately is it there. It stops us seeing how things interpenetrate. And we discussed interpenetration a lot from Stephen M. Rosen and Diego Lucio Rappaport, how reality comes into itself. The external goes into the internal and vice versa. In the quote from James here, we have, I'm not going to read the whole. A concept means a that and no other. It is sharply defined. And in this definition process, we want to exclude, we want to make clear, we want to cut off. And we get these matter-like thoughts, concepts, arguments. So somehow matters or atomism starts already in the thinking and in the talking. Go down to the very bottom here. They start talking about Eastern thought. And the last sentence there, and it continues on the next. By contrast, the aim for clarity resolves complexities into simple generalities, and what cannot be reduced in this manner is charged with being obscure, says Bergson. And here starts the next step. So in order to gain clarity, so to speak, criticism evolves. It's a very Western thing. And criticism hides the clarity, or sorry, hides the wholeness. And it's a mentioning of regret, the third paragraph. Regret often does come later if one has not by then become so narrow and rigid, tense, I would say, and muscularly confused, sludge, that one cannot see what it is one can no longer see. I have a sharp memory than myself. I had a friend who became so narrow. So he wanted to study the most logical language in the world, which he thought to be Turkish. It ended that he criticized the speakers of the language of not knowing their own language. His model of sharpness didn't cope with the real live flow of language. Kalle, over to you. I pause so you can do something on that.
Hello. My presentation. I do like this. It's excellent summary of the chapter. Modern self is discontinuous. And I began to think about the wave and particle duality. How should we understand it? So here, in simpler terms, we are wave and a particle. So in this juxtaposition, in quantum physics, the wave and particle should be on equal level. And it's a little bit problematic that we see in here. This chapter 34 by McGilchrist, it emphasizes continuity, that is the wave. So we have a kind of dichotomy where wave is prioritized.
Oh, it's a potentiality wave as well, which is before.
Yes, that's good. I was to mention.
Sorry.
No, it's good. So we have a dichotomy here, and then we have actually another wave, which is the real. This is not a very beautiful wave, but this is one wave, which actually encompasses them both. So in this very famous superposition, we could say that you have three things at the same time. You have a small wave, so to say, and a particle, and then a big wave that encompasses both. And if you understand this that we have three things, but one wave, big wave encompassing both, there's actually no contradiction to what McGilchrist says. And we need, because we cannot have, say, that particle is particle, we should avoid particle thinking, the dot-like thinking. We should avoid this. Yes, we sometimes need it as quantum physics learners. And we have now, but we should really have them in a continuous flow.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Let me take some quotes directly from this book.
Indeed, why not?
Let me emphasize how important this book is. Can we say that in the last 100 years, if you think about books and science, can we say that there is a book that is more important than this book. I cannot think of any book that would be more important than this. So we should really study this. So let me mention this quotation by James on page 955. And I will read only the last phrase in this long quotation, page 955. In the real, concrete, sensible flux of life, experiences compenetrate each other.
Yeah.
So that it's not easy to know just what is excluded and what not. And these words are very apt. Perhaps my favorite phrases in this lecture. This also illustrates De Bono's famous water logic.
Yes.
And I have actually written a paper that I hope to publish called Water Logic, and I use water logic to discuss a problem in the New Testament. And so the scholars say that we have to exclude one manuscript from 5th century. Instead, we should only put our trust on other manuscripts. I would use, for instance, this phrase by James to argument for the inclusion of this. Because, to repeat, in the real, concrete, sensible flux of life, experiences compenetrate each other, so that it's not easy to know just what is excluded and what not. So everything flows. Yes, things can be excluded, but when you take in consciousness, we have. So in real life, some other manuscript would be included, and sometimes there is like a flux. Another manuscript comes in, and we have a new light. But we should not consciously exclude something. Then it becomes wrong.
Yeah, narrow. And Edward de Bono said that argumentation is the weak intellect. Criticism and argumentation, inclusion is the grander. And he often sticked his chin out, and he was venomously attacked by academia for that. His article in The Guardian, it was the last thing he published, because he was so venomously attacked by everyone. Yeah, poor Edward de Bono. It was a grandson.
And so Kierkegaard said that species ideality. So it's the contrary view to Plato. Plato was suspicious of language. I think the truth is in the between. Kierkegaard.
Yeah, gesture and language together, bring the whole thing in simultaneously.
Speaking of attacking people, like De Bono was attacked in his article, let me finish this presentation by mentioning the attack on Jason budget in 2002, and we call this lecture. And this lecture has a number.
Oh yeah, the assault, the poor guy.
So I want to remind you, please, viewers, to see this short TED talk with Jason Budget, where he speaks about this assault in 2002, and to which McGilchrist dedicated this chapter 23. Flow and movement. Bye.
Thank you very much, Kalle. Thank you everyone for listening in. Have a beautiful morning, day, or afternoon, wherever you are. Bye bye.